Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Parallel Systems broadcast. I'm your host, Mike, and today we are joined with our good friend over in America, Jeff White. Jeff White has a YouTube channel. You can find it under Jeff White Fitness Solutions, although, as far as I know, you don't talk too much about fitness, Jeff. It's mainly about geopolitics and what's going on. I know you do some health stuff, kind of like my channel. It's a little bit eclectic. We're men of many tastes and interests. So before we get into anything, Jeff, welcome back to the show. How are things going for you over in America?
Things are going good personally. It's so much going on. I'm just taking it all in stride at this point. It's amazing how much has changed since we've last talked, and it's accelerating all in the wrong direction.
It is going in the wrong direction. And we say this every time we speak, we say the same thing. Oh, wow, look how much has happened and changed since we last spoke. And yet we only spoke a few months back. Every time we speak, it's a couple of months interval. So that really suggests to me like time speeding up and we're going somewhere really fast. And I think the fog's starting to clear, at least for me, that where we're going is not good, Jeff. I think we all know that, but it seems to me it's getting worse and worse by the minute. So I just want to get your immediate take on all of that, Jeff. How are you feeling about what's happening right now in Israel and Palestine? Does this feel to you like a really significant escalation, or is this just another one on the continuum of mini crises that we've been having?
It's going on the continuum of crises. Let me start off by saying I'm totally against war, period. I'm totally against it because it just hurts the average person. The average person just wants to, get up, go to work, come home, spend time with their family. We have no desire to get caught up in any of this madness. And that's exactly where we are right now. So I just want to preface it with that. But unfortunately, I believe this is a continuation of where we're headed. I think it's part of the you own nothing and be happy mantra that we've been hearing for the last several years. And this is just a step in that direction. I will say this though, I don't know who's right, who's wrong here, but I am starting to believe that since the war in Russia and Ukraine isn't going the way they anticipated, maybe they have moved on to another playground per se, another target. And I said this when a couple months ago, when the BRICS nations they opened up with the new countries, and they added those countries. It's Iran, Saudi Arabia, and a couple others in the Middle East. My first thought was, I can't see America just letting that go. I can't see them just willingly letting them join BRICS. What would they do? Are they going to try something? Then lo and behold, a couple months later, we have major war brewing in the Middle East. Is it a coincidence? I don't know. But see, what I'm doing is I'm trying to look at this from a different perspective, from a big picture perspective. When you go on Twitter, you see everyone talking about the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Palestine, who's right, who's wrong. I don't know who's right or wrong here at this point. We've been lied to and misled so many times. I don't know who's pulling the strings, but I definitely believe there's some things that we have no privy to that is going on behind the scenes. And they are just giving us so much information, and some of it might be misinformation, and we're just all confused. But I do believe this is just part of a bigger plan to really hurt the world. And it's just making me very, very uncomfortable. And it's just another plan or notch in their belt to get us exactly where they want us to be.
That's a really interesting take, Jeff. I have not actually heard anybody link this to the recent announcements by BRICS to have these Middle Eastern countries, but you're absolutely right. And I said the same a while back that the US will always respond to people trying to leave its sphere of influence. It has to, because that is the end of the American empire if it loses some of these key nations. So it's a very interesting take. Now, I did do a newsletter. I do audio newsletters for my Patreon community, which are about finance and geopolitics. And I focused specifically on Israel. And I'm not going to be able to discuss all of those things on here for obvious reasons, because there were many things about this that just didn't add up immediately. And there's another part of this, Jeff, that I don't know if you think about it in these terms, but I saw it in two terms. One was the geopolitics, And the other was actually a biblical perspective, because if you go back to the Bible and end times, this is a key part of the world, and this is where it's all going to unfold. And we know that Israel is a biblical nation, and therefore its future is biblical, its past is biblical, and its future will be biblical too. And I mentioned in my newsletter, just one quick kind of throwback from that is that in 2001, they actually got 5 unblemished red heifers. Now, to most people, they'll say, what? 5 unblemished red heifers is a part of the biblical story. They need an unblemished red heifer to be born in Israel so that they can sacrifice it at the temple that they will rebuild on the mount. Now, for most people, this isn't a part of their paradigm, but you have to understand that part of it, Jeff, because this is what is actually unfolding now. And this war could lead to the rebuilding of that temple. So I'm not going to get into it in this one. I do have a podcast with Rick Moon where we talk about end times, and we specifically talked in that about end times and why the Middle East was the place to be looking, not Ukraine, not Russia. And we had a whole discussion around it. And we said that that'll be the theater of war. That's where it's going to all kick off. Now, for me, this has now happened. So I actually think this is a much bigger part of the narrative than, let's say, Russia, Ukraine, although that's terrible and it was big. How do you feel about that, Jeff? Do you feel like this is more significant, that this is going to speed things up, or it is just another crisis with the rest of them that we've seen?
Oh, it speeds everything up. And the thing, I made a video about this earlier today, actually. This scares me on an economic level. Now, I'm going to just say this real quick, and I'm not going to elaborate on this, the religious aspect of it. As far as America is concerned, we have taken God out of everything that we've done. There's no Christ in Christmas. God isn't in school anymore. The church is gotten political. And then we have the different pronouns and the transgender. If that's what you want to do, that's fine. But we have gotten so far away from biblical standards that it just makes my head spin. So it may be a biblical thing, and it's just something just is not adding up as far as from the American perspective. I believe we are looking at it from a purely monetary and a control perspective. But what really scares me about all of this is no one is talking about the oil. I don't see anyone talking about the oil aspect. If war pops off, oil can go up to $150, $200, $300. We could see mass chaos here in the United States. And then on top of that, we have, a $33 trillion budget deficit. If oil goes up to that point, and if the BRICS nations continue to de-dollarize, the U.S. will be finished. So I believe there's a sense of urgency on the U.S.'s side to destabilize the Middle East and to control or keep control some power, because I believe Russia didn't go along with the plan, so they decided to go into the Middle East. And as a result of that, we see this entire chaos, and it's just catching wildfire. Now, you said the biblical perspective. A lot of people around the world are following the Bible. I'm a Christian myself, so I'm familiar with this, the end of times and Revelations. But it seems like there's a lot more going on behind the scenes as well. So it's a very complicated situation, but I do believe some powers that be are looking at it more from a power perspective than the biblical perspective. It just happens to be all just coming into place in one, all at the same time.
Yeah, I agree, Jeff. It's being used in a multifaceted way. And the biblical perspective for me, it's almost prophetic, isn't it? That this is happening. But I would imagine that the establishment in Israel certainly have ambitions in terms of that biblical prophecy. I know that they have a society over there that is actually planning for the rebuilding of that temple. They have plans and everything. So that, for them, this is their destiny. They see this as destiny for the Israel state. So you've got all of these different players, like you said, many different agendas in play, but I think it's a valid one. And people who don't have that are probably missing a key part of the narrative. Whether you believe in the Bible or not, you better believe that the state of Israel has people who are using this prophecy as part of their own destiny, and probably not in the way people think. I would, in my opinion, the whole idea of an antichrist is desired by some people. I think there are some people out there, and I'm not saying this is Jewish people. I'm saying there are people out there in power who probably do seek to have that kind of thing form. But I'm digressing too much, Jeff, so I'm going to leave that one. In terms of what you said about oil, I've got a little bit of homework for listeners. Go to a chart of the oil price and look at what the oil price did before the previous 3 or 4 major financial crises. So we're talking 2008, the year 2000. Just go have a look, and what you'll find is that that oil price did something quite dramatic in the year preceding it. So a big spike in the oil price is a key warning sign that foretells the markets are going to start to tank. It's happened every other time. It's almost 100% success rate, Jeff. Now, like you said, underneath Iran, you have the Persian Gulf. So if Iran are involved in this, then you've got the Persian Gulf, then you've got Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, all of those oil producing nations, and you've got that, is it the Strait of Hamas or Hormuz?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that small little strait. So like you really good geopolitical knowledge on your part, Jeff, to pick that one out. And I think too, it's all setting up for some big crises, one far bigger than we're in now. And I do know the US has 2 aircraft carriers out there right now, the USS Eisenhower and another one. And I think there was a drone strike just today on a US military base, apparently by somebody. We don't know who. It could be the same people who flew those planes into the Pentagon. I don't know. However, we have to take this really seriously, Jeff. It could blow up overnight, and tomorrow we could be in a completely different world. So how are you coping with that? How are you dealing with that in your day-to-day life? Have you actually took any action beyond the normal?
Oh, absolutely. I sure have. I stocked up on a lot more food, a lot more security, got more security because I see what's going on and I see the writing on the wall. And you talked about that canal, that strait. What I see is, just imagine if China and Taiwan they get into their conflict. There's going to be a blockade. There will be no supplies going out of there. If this thing's explodes in Middle East, there won't be any oil going out there also. So the entire world will be literally frozen. It's going to be a mess. So I look at all of this. I look at the potential for the price of oil to skyrocket. I look at the potential for the dollar to dramatically lose its value. Because also, I don't know if you saw this a couple of days ago, the BRICS nations came out and said the US and Europe may have to start using local currencies to buy oil. If that happens, the US is done. So I see all this. But like you said before we started, I might be desensitized, but I think I'm more prepared now than I am afraid because I see what's going on. So I'm just preparing and stocking up. I just see what's going on and I say, okay, this is what I have to do. I can't stop this from happening. So getting upset won't change anything. All I can do is prepare the best of my ability. And that's what I'm doing. So I watch everything that's going on and I say, this is terrible. I don't like where we're headed. And I'm trying to see best case and worst case scenario. And the best case scenario still looks very bad. So I just say, well, this is what I have to do. So I'm not like panicking, I'm not freaking out. I'm just doing what I have to do to prepare for what's coming. So I'm fine in a bad way. I'm not happy about what I see on the news. Well, not mainstream news, but on Twitter, the fighting, the bombings. I don't like the arguing that I see. So instead of getting into it and getting myself stressed out, I take a step back. So it can consume you if you let it, but the key is to not let it consume you and just stay calm and stay focused on what you have to do. Because we can analyze the entire situation all we want, but at the end of the day, what's going to happen is going to happen. So you need to start preparing, period. But you got to stay calm and you have to accept what's going on. I think that's where I'm at. I'm at that point of accepting. It's different degrees of um, how people handle different things, crisis in their life. I think they have, what is it? You start in denial, then anger, then acceptance, or something like that. I'm at acceptance, and so I'm just preparing. That's it.
And how are citizens reacting over in the US, Jeff? Are they still falling for this old divide and conquer strategy? Pick a side, choose a side. You must be on this side. Are they still falling for that?
Well, what I do, I don't talk about this in person, to be honest with you, unless I meet someone who kind of hints that they are aware of what's going on, and I'll just give them little feelers and just kind of tread water lightly to see if they're aware. And to my pleasant surprise, I've met quite a few people. We'll just start talking, and next thing I know, we're knee deep into it, kind of like how me and you talk. I'm really happy to see that. If you walk down the street, people are still just living everyday lives. People still going, just doing about their daily activity. But I have met some people who are very aware, who are very concerned, who are very angry about what's going on, and they're preparing too. So to my pleasant surprise, I've met quite a few people. When I donate blood, I met a nurse who is really into it too. And we talked about it, and it really impressed me that she knew everything that was going on. And one of my neighbors, I'm so happy about that. One of my neighbors, we were talking, and he's really into it too. So I'm slowly seeing people who are starting to catch on.
That's awesome to hear. And I actually had a similar experience too, actually, with a family member regarding this most recent situation. The first thing that he said to me when I was on the phone, I didn't ask him about it like you, I wait to see. He said, "This doesn't feel right. There is no way that X, Y, and Z could happen in this way that I was told." So
Mm-hmm.
people are starting to think, and I think they are starting to understand that this just can't be normal. We just can't have so many events one after the other, with the same narratives, the same type script, always picking a side, always othering one side and saying the other side's the virtuous ones. People are starting to figure out the mechanism. And I think that's key, Jeff, is you have to understand the mechanism because the narratives are confusing and people get given videos of X, Y, and Z and they think, well, it must be real because I've seen a video of it, because they maybe are not sophisticated enough to know that not everything we see, not everything that our government shows is real. However, if you do start to figure out the mechanism, then you don't need all the evidence. You can say, aha, I'm seeing this same thing happening again. The same red flags on this one. People are being told that they must do this. This one side is being picked heavily over the other, and there's no nuance. There's no room for nuance. That's a big red flag, Jeff. If there's no room for nuance, that's not life. There's no such thing as 100% one thing and 0% the other. There's always nuance, Jeff. So I think people are starting to figure out the mechanism, and yeah, I'm positive about that. I am extremely worried about how fast it's all moving, though, and whether people will figure it out in time to make any difference on it. So one of the things that you discussed in your recent video, and I just want to pick back up on it because you did mention it a few questions ago, was China and Taiwan. And again, people like me and you, Jeff, we're always thinking one step ahead. So it's like, okay, people are focused on war one. Well, no, we're thinking a few steps ahead, and you have to do that. So do you think that this is part of that road to a China and Taiwan conflict, that this may be a part of it? This may be chess pieces moving around the board? That's my first question. And my second question is, how do you think that's going to impact citizens in the US if China does invade Taiwan? What will change for them? Do you think it will change for them? Because a lot of people aren't thinking like that. But I know in your recent video, you said actually it will have big impacts over here in America.
Well, let me say first off, I did not see Israel and Palestine coming. I didn't see that coming at all. What I saw, this is what I was thinking. I'm thinking the art of war, Sun Tzu. I'm thinking Russia and China are working together. They have a plan. They're going to this is just my personal opinion. Russia is going to continue the war with Ukraine. They're going to extend it out and wear NATO down as far as pouring money into it, the troops, and also, which is most important, having the public lose confidence and support for the war. As it kept going, that is when, oh, let me back up. And as this continues, the US is going to keep spending money, billions and billions and trillions of dollars into this war. It's going to continue to inflate the economy and eventually destroy the economy. See, my thinking is this: the US and Europe is slowly destroying themselves from within. If that happens, the politicians can't say, "Oh, well, Putin did this, so he's the one who did it. He bombed all these cities. He bombed, in the UK or wherever. So he's the reason." If he continued on his path and the US continue on their path, then the American public really can't blame Putin. So we can't have that rallying cry. We can't all come together and say he's the guy who did it. Meanwhile, as this continues, that's when China would invade Taiwan. And that is when the embargoes would start. That is when they would stop sending us all the clothes, all the medications. I know they come from India too, but all those things would stop. Once that happens, the US will literally come to a halt. In addition to that, inflation would continue, the economy would crash, and then the US would be done. That was my thinking. I mean, I don't really like talking like this because I live in America. So that basically means my way of life is going to be done. So it's not like I'm happy that this would happen. I'm just being a realist and looking at how I saw things happening. They were playing the long game and just going to wait it out because there's no way the US can continue this. We are like $33 trillion. We're already seeing unemployment creeping up in the United States. We're seeing prices of everything getting so high. We are destroying ourselves from within. We don't need any other countries to bring us down. It's just a matter of time, unfortunately. So, but then you have this wrinkle with Israel and Palestine, and that just throws everything out the window. If anything, it just magnifies the problem and accelerates the problem because now you have the problem with oil. And I think if oil goes up, all bets are off in the United States. And then the religious aspect, I don't even want to touch that. But, I just thought that they would just let America destroy themselves and they would just continue on. And we couldn't really point the finger at anyone in particular because everyone here in America sees the layoffs. We see the prices going up. We see all the problems here. We see the rising crime rates. We can't blame someone else for that. We see all the immigrants coming across the border who, oh, we didn't even talk about that. We see a lot of immigrants coming across the border who are young fighting age men. What's going on with that? That's a whole nother can of worms.
Same as Europe, Jeff. We've been having that for decades now. It's sped up grossly since 2020. They're in hotels up and down the country. Every town, every city has dozens of hotels filled. I have family members dotted around my city where I'm from. Every one of them has a migrant hotel within a mile radius. My sister has one at the top of her street. Hundreds of men, all young, all fighting age. And this is one of the knock-on consequences of what's happening in Israel and Palestine, is that all of these people are on the streets getting angry, getting violent, protesting. They're cheering for Palestine. The West, of course, is choosing Israel. This creates an immediate civil war in these countries. And the most violent and capable of those, of our countries, are those young men. I mean, the British public are quite soft. I'm not going to lie. Most of them are very benign. They're certainly not going to be on the streets fighting. These men are. So this is where all of the hotspots, you could quite easily see how overnight this could just flare up and you've got cities on fire, and I don't want to turn this one into just a doom and gloom show, but it is serious stuff. And we really have to start taking notice of what's happening because I think things are going to happen quickly at this point. And listen, we've been talking about this ever since we started our channels, Jeff. We foresaw all of this. We didn't know exactly if it was going to go this way or that way, but we kind of knew the trajectory, and you could see that we as nations, not me and you, but our nations were setting themselves up for problems later on. And I can't help but think that's part of the plan, Jeff. I mean, America's done all this to itself, and these people who run American policy at home, the deep state, whoever you want to call it, they're not dumb. They're a lot of things, but they ain't dumb. They know what they're doing. So I think there's a bigger project in play here The same with America and the oil. America is rushing because once the dollar's gone, it can't print the dollar to pay for its foreign policy and war. So America has to rush. And like you said, Russia and China can just say, well, all we have to do is hold out another decade and America crumbles on itself. So, yeah, this really puts the world under pressure. And I think that's why we're in what I call the decade of crises. I don't know. How do you feel about that term, Jeff, the decade of crisis?
Oh
We're only
yeah,
3 years in, pal.
it's so funny. My brother-in-law said every year it gets worse, progressively worse. And I had to think about it. And I'm like, he's right. Last year wasn't this bad. The year before wasn't this bad. I know we had the pandemic and everything, but if you go back to say pre-2020, life wasn't, I mean, it was much better then than it is now. So I see it getting progressively worse. Looking back over my life, I don't really remember life getting maybe going bad, getting better than it started going down. And that's where we are right now. And as you said, they know exactly what they're doing and they're setting us up. And I'm glad you brought up about the money aspect. If imagine if you have a debit card or a credit card and you know that you can use that credit card unlimited until I don't know for 2 weeks. What are you going to do? You're going to buy everything under the sun because you know after that point you won't be able to use it. I think that's exactly what they're doing. They're trying to get all these weapons. They're trying to do all these things they can now because they know it's just a matter of time before that well has run dry and they will not be able to use that money printer anymore. And here's something else that I discussed too that a lot of people aren't really focusing on. If you really look, you will see that China and Japan are not buying US treasuries anymore. They have cut back tremendously. Even our own government has stopped the buybacks. So what does that mean? That means it's just a matter of time before we are basically insolvent because we need those bonds. We need people to buy those treasuries. We are losing billions and millions of dollars in treasury sales to these other countries. That's a big part of our revenue. If we don't have that, how are we going to function? How are we going to survive with a $33 trillion deficit? So they're doing everything they can now because they know it's just a matter of time. And I don't think it's years. I can't put a time on it because of the Israel-Palestine situation, but I don't think we have until 2030. I think things are going to be devastating well before that. So I think they have accelerated the plan. They're rushing because they're getting desperate because I think they're behind schedule and they don't see a way out. So they're doing everything they can now to hopefully get out of this mess, but I just don't see how it's going to happen.
Yeah, and I don't know how you frame it precisely, Jeff, but the way that I see it is the US is a corporation. President Biden is the CEO of the corporation, but he has a whole board of shareholders, and they're the ones that tell him what to do. Now, who those shareholders are? Well, I would say it's the big banks. So I think the US as a corporation is definitely bankrupt. And every time the US has to renew its debt, it has to put up more collateral. I think they took the citizens' gold in 1933. They were bankrupt at that point. I think that was the banksters saying, right, we need more from you. Take the gold off them. And I think if you go back throughout US history, we've seen this numerous times. They've changed the US name. It used to be America, then it was the United States of America. They've changed the corporation's name even, and then we've got the District of Columbia. So I see it quite differently. I see these countries as corporations, and they are bankrupt, and they're beholden to their financiers. And I think in this case, Jeff, we've just found another key piece of the puzzle from the book that we've been discussing, the David Webb book. And it seems to me like the bankers have asked for more collateral and they've got it in the form of stocks, bonds, and financial assets. So what's your take on that, Jeff? Do you see it in a similar vein? And how do you feel about this book that's just been released?
That book actually did scare me. That book scared me because it pretty much gives you no hope. And the part that scared me about that book was the part about the land grab. They can really just take your land from you, and then you're a nomad. What are you going to do? I'm like you. I have my roots. I have my things here. I'm trying to set myself up for like grit down situations. But if they take this from me, what do I do? It's similar to, what's going on with people around the world, in Ukraine, and they have to leave their homes. So that part of the book really, really scared me. But what frustrated me is how they are working so hard to break people, how they're trying to destroy people. Again, we just want to live our lives. I don't enjoy talking about this stuff. I don't enjoy spending my money on preps, allegedly. I just want to live my life and enjoy it. But how can you enjoy your life when you see these things on the news and you hear this all the time? So that really bothers me. But as far as the stock market, um, I I don't really trust it at this point because it's still just a paper currency. Is still based on the fiat. I'm really leery about the markets right now. I think they are really going to try and pull a fast one on everyone. And I think they're going to make the switch to the CBDC and universal basic income. So they're going to be people who are still in the stock market, but I think they're going to eventually lose almost everything because once the currency devalues and the stock market crashes, it'll be worth a fraction of what it was before. So I haven't really figured out the stock market aspect of it but when I look at it from the fiat dollar currency perspective, it just looks like a dead end situation and you need to get out of it. I'm no longer a financial advisor, of course. I'm not giving advice, but that's just my personal opinion. It seems as though it's time to start shifting away because you're going to be holding the bag, and that bag is just going to be full of feathers. And you think you're doing okay. Robert Kiyosaki said it best. Why would you keep saving something they can just print at will? That makes no sense. Why would you keep saving and they can just keep printing it as much as they want? You want to have something that has a limit, that is not as many. It's not, you can't print it to infinity. That is where you want to place your money. So I'm really leery about the stock market right now. I'm still trying to figure out where they're going with it because they're still keeping it propped up, maybe to keep people, calm. But I'm very uncomfortable with the stock market right now because it should have crashed a long time ago. When I saw it was still making record highs during the pandemic, then I knew that this was definitely a scam at that point.
Yeah, I echo what you said, Jeff. And just recently, we bought ourselves I'd say about 2 years worth of wood. We got a load of trees bought in, ready to chop. And then me and my wife built a wood store. So we got a new wood store going. I was out there today sawing that wood. Then I carrying the logs through, splitting them, stacking them. And, I think I'm going to buy some more, Jeff, because I don't want to hold my wealth in things that they can print. I don't want to hold my wealth in financial assets, debt instruments. You can call those notes that you have in your pocket or digits on the screen, even worse, in a bank account, because that can be bailed in. But that's just a debt instrument. That's a promise to pay you. And even if that promise is fulfilled, it doesn't tell you anything about what it's going to be worth when you are paid it. You might be paid it back in a year. And I can guarantee, Jeff, actually, I can guarantee you now, if I keep that money in a bank and I try and buy another 25 meters of wood next year, it's going to cost me double. So I'd rather spend that money now because it's just going to be sat there losing value. The wood, that's going up in value because it's a real thing. And I feel good about having a really big store of wood because God only knows where we're going to be in a year's time. So that's what I'm doing, Jeff. I'm thinking, like, if I've got a little bit of extra cash, what can I put it into that I might need in the future that's going to help me and my family out? And I'm turning to real things, anything that's real, even if it's food for the store, wood for the woodshed, whatever it is, Jeff, solar panels. Even if I've already got the thing, like, for example, a big Berkey or a British Berkefeld, that's what I use, it's the British one, water filter. I thought, you know what? I'm going to grab a few spares, just in case, because not only might I need a spare, even though these things are built like tanks, that's how I'm pretty sure it'll last. But I thought, well, what if something happens to it? What if in a crisis you can't get them anymore and a neighbor needs one and I could sell it, I could trade it, tradability too. So it sounds like an extreme way of thinking about things, but I think when people think like that, it's usually because they've become so desensitized to just how crazy the world is right now.
Yeah, you can become desensitized, but you still have to stay focused too. You have to still stay focused. A lot of times when people are desensitized, maybe they think, oh, okay, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to continue living my life. No, you cannot do that. You have to stay focused on what you need to do. And I'm glad you brought up like buying extra Berkeys and water filters. I love this saying, and all the preppers know this saying: two is one, and one is none. And if you think about it, it is so true because you could have two of something. Like I wear glasses, and I have two pair of glasses because when I had one pair and it broke, I was just in a bad way. So now I have two pair. So whatever you have, get at least two. Get at least two because if you lose that one, and then like you said, if that currency is worth nothing in the future, you will be in a world of hurt. So I think that's very important. But I also have a mind trick for myself when it comes to money and the banknotes. What I do is I convert that banknote into an asset. And what is an asset? In this definition, an asset is something physical that you can use that will more than likely keep its value, retain its value, or become invaluable. That could be food. That could be, the wood that you're talking about. It could be the water filters. It could be some type of security. All these things you want to start looking at. Okay, what can I convert my money or my banknote into today that I may not be able to get tomorrow because I cannot afford it? Can you imagine all that firewood and you get it now and it is triple the price this time next year, and it's cold and it's winter time and people can't afford it and they had the opportunity to get it, now they can't? Can you imagine how angry they'll be? Can you imagine how angry someone will be if they didn't buy that bag of flour when it was, just a couple of dollars, and now it's $25 a bag of flour? They'll be devastated. So you want to convert those banknotes into assets that you will need and use. And here in America, another asset that we must have is security. You need security more than ever these days. So all these different things that we must do. But see, here's the problem though. Because of inflation, they're making it harder and harder for people to do that. It's a squeeze. They're slowly squeezing people so you don't have that extra income to buy those extra things that you need. A lot of people now are just getting by, living day to day, check to check, and they really can't afford to buy the extra things that they need. Unfortunately, when we tried to tell people about this a year, 2, 3 years ago, they didn't listen. Now they're listening, but now they're stuck because they know what they need to do and they really can't afford to do it. So they got to do what they can now before it's really too late.
Yeah, no, great points, Jeff. And this is about thinking ahead. I first started preparing for the times we live in 2016. So I was well ahead of the curve. I'm not saying that to brag. I'm just saying that's why I was able to ensure that I wasn't so exposed to things like the inflation. I wasn't so exposed to things like food shocks because I was thinking ahead. And it doesn't mean that you can't think ahead now. There are going to be further and further into this. There are going to be more and more issues that arise. So, even if now you've been caught unawares and you're on the back foot and you're thinking, damn, this is hard. And maybe financially you're struggling, downsize now. Don't delay. Don't think, it's all going to recover. No, take the action now, downsize, get out of debt. Get yourself into a situation where that money that's coming in each month is staying in your pocket. You're not giving it to somebody like a bank, or you're not giving it in rent, even worse. Get yourself something. You can do this. You can get something smaller than what you've got. You can get something that's more that has a better capacity for some of these things we're talking about, like collecting rainwater, growing a little bit of food. Focus on the land, not the house. We've all been indoctrinated to live these big lifestyles, bigger house, more gadgets, more electronics. Now's the time to reverse that too. In the same way we're reversing from our financialized assets into real assets, we should be doing that with our private lives too. I've started to do a lot more things for myself, Jeff. I'm not I'm not getting workmen in like I would before to do things. I'm saying, no, I'll learn it myself because that might actually be a useful skill. So there's lots of things we can do, isn't there, Jeff, to increase our resiliency. Like you said, get yourself, so if you've got some excess cash, buy something you're going to need in a year's time because you're still going to need it. And if you don't, guess what? You can sell it probably for 2 or 3 times the price. If I chop all this wood, Jeff, and decide I'm moving house, I'll sell it and I'll get more money than I paid for it. So that is an investment in itself, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. You have no choice at this point. I look at it like this. If I were to lose my job, well, my ways of making money, could I still survive? So if I didn't have any money coming in, could I survive? That's the mindset you want to have. And for me, honestly, I would be able to survive for a little while. How long, I don't know. When you have food stocked up, when you have alternative sources of power, when you have things of that nature, that can help you get by. And so while your mind is all over the place and you may be stressed out, if you can still eat and then do you some of the daily things that you normally are used to doing, that can help you stay calm so you can formalize a new game plan. So my mindset is simple. If I lose my job or if I'm not making any money, can I still maintain a similar standard of living? That's where you want to get. So that means you got to have some food stocked up. You got to have these different things available to you. Or what if there's another lockdown situation and you can't get out of the house or some type of grit down situation? Would you be able to survive? Maybe not on the same level, but would you be able to maintain and be able to live, somewhat comfortably? That is where we need to change our mindset too. I mean, I like to go out like everyone else and have a good time, but I'm seeing what's going on in the world. And I think we need to be a lot more defensive right now and a lot more proactive into protecting ourselves, being able to live during, stressful times where, you know, the whole world could be totally upside down and we're living in a way we're not accustomed to.
That's awesome advice, Jeff. And yeah, just for the benefit of listeners, recently, one thing that I did was I got an electrician in to sort out my electrics. We got a house. It was an old house when we bought it. So it was something that I wanted to do. We replaced all the fuse, just got all the sockets checked over, made sure it was all safe. Then I got a plumber in. We replaced our water pump. It's such a key part of our house's infrastructure, Jeff, because I've essentially got a big wood stove that heats my entire house. If I don't have wood, it's over. If I can't heat that stove in -20, we're going to be in serious trouble. Now, the water pump started to break. So I was like immediately going into winter, get that thing replaced, get it all checked over. Because, like you said, when the real crisis hits, maybe that person doesn't arrive. Maybe you can't get a plumber. Maybe those pumps all of a sudden disappear because China's not sending them. There's an embargo. Maybe. There's so many things. So just settle those questions now if you can. Same with yourself, with your health. If you need some dental work, go get it done. Get it done now, because I remember in the UK, there was a whole 2-year period where people couldn't go to the dentist. They just couldn't go. Dental health is very much related to heart health. So we're seeing a lot of people with heart attacks right now. That's surely a part of it, is that period between 2020 and 2022. So all of these things, Jeff, yes, it is not nice to talk about, but I think there's also a hopeful message in that, we all have the capacity to dramatically increase our chances of surviving. And what you said there, Jeff, about like, can I survive if I lose my job? One thing that I say to people is, how much do you need to live? How low can you get that? So can you cut certain things out? What's the minimum you need to live? But it's usually a lot less than people are spending each month. People might spend, I don't know, for example, $1,000, but they'll find if they really wanted to, if they cut out going out to eat and all the other, silly services that we sign up for, then they probably can get that down to $600, $500. And then I say, okay, now take that figure and let's imagine how many months can you survive now if that's the figure. It'll probably double the amount of months you thought you could survive because you're surviving on less. But also now try and extend that out. If you can get to the point where you can say, I could survive for 2 years, 3 years on just a little bit of savings, not in cash, in precious metals that you can convert back to cash as you need it. I think you'll sleep a lot better at night, Jeff, if you can do that. So that's one thing that I advise people to do if you want to get yourself financially sorted. Voluntary simplicity is what we call it, Jeff. Start to live now as you would have to live in a harder time.
I'm glad you brought that up because I've been doing a lot of thinking about life in America. And I would say since the 70s, well, maybe even before that, um, when the money printing really started, people in America have been really spoiled because we lived on credit and we bought everything on credit. So we were able to live above our means. So we got spoiled by that, and people think that's just the norm. But if you go around in other countries, they may not have that luxury, so they know how to live at their means, even below their means. So I think it's important for Americans to really take a good look, like you just said, about the bare minimum that you can live on and still be relatively comfortable. I think that's important because that's exactly where we're headed. And so many people are so accustomed to living a certain way, a certain lifestyle, that it's going to be a hard transition for them because they just can't imagine living any other way. But you have to learn how to do that. So basically, it's also a mental thing. You have to start working on your mental fitness. And it's funny you say my name is Jeff White Fitness Solutions. For me, fitness is physical, mental, spiritual, and financial fitness. So it's all of that. But a lot of us, we're not working on our mental fitness. And so when stuff hits the fan, we will not be prepared to handle the trials and tribulations that come our way. So we have to be mentally prepared. It's not doom and gloom, it's reality. Are you still going to run from reality or are you going to face reality? I'm facing reality and I'm like, okay, I think that I might be eating rice for a while. I love my pizza. I can't lie. I like to go out to eat. But if I just have to eat plain rice for a while and, maybe some tuna or something, I mean, I can do it because I'm mentally prepared. If you're not mentally prepared for that, you're going to be miserable. You will be so sad and just out of sorts that you won't be able to function. Meanwhile, I should be able to think clearly because I've been visualizing this. I'm still living my life and enjoying, but mentally I'm thinking, okay, these things can happen. Other people in other countries have had to live this way and thrived and enjoyed and had a great life living this way. We can do it too, but you got to start here. You got to start thinking along those lines and saying, hey, we had a good ride. We had a great ride here in America, living large and living on the backs of other countries, because that's basically what we did. That ride is over. They're standing up. We're getting off their back. We got to stand on our own feet. And you won't be standing as high as you did when you were standing on their backs. That's the mental aspect that we have to start thinking about. No one likes to talk about this stuff. I don't, but it's reality, and I'm getting prepared in every way I possibly can.
There's a yearly activity that we do over here in Poland, Jeff. It's called Morsowania, which Morsowania is to do with sea lions. That's what the word roughly translates to. And what we do, Jeff, is as we get towards the winter months, going into autumn, every Sunday we go to the lake and we get ourselves in the cold water up to our neck and we stand there, just our trunks or swimwear, and we stand in that cold water and we breathe deeply and we do it for maybe 10 minutes. Well, you build up. Basically, going into winter, you'll build up. You'll start off maybe 1 minute. Next week, you might get to 1 minute 20 and you'll build up. Now, as it gets into deep winter and that lake is frozen and it's minus 20, we take an axe and we smash that lake and we get in the freezing cold water. But by now, our tolerance is built up. And then guess what, Jeff? As you're walking around in minus 20, you feel fine. As you're at home and your house isn't quite as warm as it normally is because the heating has to now combat minus 20, you don't feel so cold. You've got the tolerance. You've got the tolerance for it. Now, I'm somebody who's got an awesome cold tolerance because I've been doing this for years. I did it in the UK. And then when I got to Poland and I found out they did this religiously each year, each winter, I was like, I'm all over that. Now, it's a psychological thing too, Jeff, because you're getting your mind resilient and you stood there and you're having to focus, really focus. But what it does, Jeff, is it means that when you do face the cold, when you do have to go out in minus 20, you're resilient to it. And that's what you're talking about. It's the same concept. Get yourself prepared for it now so that when it actually happens, it's just water off a duck's back, as we say in the UK.
literally, and that's key. Um, I couldn't do that right now, especially living in Florida. I have to build up my tolerance for that. I don't like the cold anymore. I'm retired. But if I had to, I would work on getting that done. But it's the same philosophy, and if you tell yourself, hey, I can do this, this is nothing, I can survive this, you'll be able to survive it, and I feel that is the key to getting through this. It all comes back to the mental. But a lot of us are not all of us, but a lot of us are still living life like nothing is wrong, or they see something's wrong, but they're not doing anything to prepare. You gotta prepare at this point. This isn't doom and gloom. This isn't a conspiracy theory anymore. Why is it everything that people thought was conspiracy theory is starting to come true? At some point you have to realize, okay, maybe this stuff is real, and maybe I need to start preparing. But yeah, it's a mental thing, and it's different ways to prepare yourself. Because when you get in that cold water, you say, if I can handle that, I can handle anything. If I can do that, there's nothing that can break me or stop me. And that's where we have to get to as a people, whether it's you in Poland, me here in Florida, the United States, or wherever we are in the world. We have to come together with that same mindset. Yes, they're trying to break us, they're trying to defeat us, but they can't, because we are too tough for that. But we haven't gotten there as a community of people yet. And when I say community, I'm talking around the world, because it's affecting all of us. Some people say, it's not just me, so I don't feel as bad. If they see other people suffering, say, okay, it's not just me suffering, so I'm not, it's okay. I don't have to bring other people down with me, because we're all in the same boat. Well, if we're all in the same boat, let's grab that oar together and start rowing. See, me and you are doing that from thousands of miles apart. We need to get everyone on the same boat, on the same stroke, but we aren't there yet. But once we get there, we would definitely be able to survive what's coming. But we're not there yet.
I think that's a great place to leave it, Jeff. That's fantastic advice. And I agree. I think right now my main focus is community building. I feel like I'm pretty much set up, but what difference does it make, Jeff, if I survive another 5 winters, if I survive another 10, if the rest of the world falls apart around me? It's not going to make much difference if everyone else folds. So it's important that we all join up on this one. And yeah, the more independent we become as a community, the more local we bring our supply chains and our food production, the better our future is going to be. And as I say that, I'm about to go pick up my milk from my neighbor about a mile away. I get my raw milk. It comes in old plastic cola bottles. She just straight from the tea into these cola bottles. Jeff, we've got some butter to pick up, so that's where we're going to go. And I buy it local. There's no nasties added to that thing. It's fresh and healthy. Do the same. Start to localize your life. Try and find people that are independent producers. Don't go to those supermarkets anymore, because again, might be a luxury now, but it might be gone tomorrow. Then where do you go? If you haven't set up those relationships, I can guarantee you you're not going to be able to get that stuff off those people. They'll have a list this long at that point of people banging on the door to get their produce, and it'll be first come, first served, Jeff. If you don't have those relationships, it's not going to happen. Before we go, Jeff, is there anything else that you think we need to cover? Have we missed anything, or is that everything?
I think we covered everything, but I do want to say something on the last point that you made is very important. People need to think about. If the supply chain breaks down, the local will be very important, because think about the packaging for your food. It's not going to come in that same plastic jug. It's not going to come in that aluminum can, your tuna fish. It's not going to come in that plastic wrapping. All that is going to be gone. So you're going to have to focus on the local. The local is going to be key. And so we need to get those relationships going. It is more important than ever, because you don't want to wait until things just get crazy before you start to figure out. You need to find out who around you is able to do what. Now's the time, because when those supply chains break, if the power goes out, a grid down situation, all that manufacturing is going to stop, and it's going to be very hard to get what you need. There won't be any trucks on the road, delivering that food that to the stores. It's all going to be local. And so we have to remember that. And we have to start making an honest effort to find out how we can help each other. So I just want to leave it at that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time again, Jeff. I always love our conversations, very enlightening, and you always give me at least one new perspective that I haven't thought of myself. And that's not easy to do because we both spend a lot of time thinking about these things. So I appreciate you a lot. Where can people find your content and work, Jeff, if they want to see more of what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm on Rumble and YouTube, of course. Both same name, Jeff White Fitness Solutions. I'm also on Twitter, JW Fitness Jeff also. And I got a bunch of books on Amazon as well under Jeffrey White.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Jeff.
Thanks, Mike. See you soon. Stay safe.